Hello and welcome in this classroom. Today we shall be continuing with pollution case study part 2. Water pollution case studies. Water pollution is any undesirable change in physical, chemical and biological characteristics of water that may render it unsuitable for any use. Minamata disease episode. Minamata is a small factory town dominated by the Cheso Corporation and is located on the western coast of Kyushu, Japan's southernmost island in Japan. In Japanese, Cheso means nitrogen. The Cheso Corporation was once a fertilizer and carbachemical company and gradually advanced to a petrochemical and plastic maker company. From 1932 to 1968, Cheso Corporation, a company located in Kumato, Japan, dumped an estimated 27 tons of mercury compounds into Minamata Bay. Thousands of people whose normal diet included fish from the bay unexpectedly developed symptoms of methyl mercury poisoning. The illness became known as the Minamata disease. Sequential events. It started out quite simply with the strangeness of cats dancing in the streets and sometimes collapsing and dying. These were the first signs of one of the most dramatic and emotionally moving cases of industrial pollution in history. The outcome was tragic. A whole town was both literally and figuratively poisoned. The case of Minamata, Japan and the mercury poisoning, originally called Minamata disease, that took place appeared briefly in news headlines in the 70s. What is Minamata disease? Minamata disease is an encephalopathy and peripheral neuropathy caused by daily intake of fish and shellfish, highly contaminated by methyl mercury. Through gills and gastrointestinal tracts, fishery products such as fish, shrimps, crabs, and shellfish take in methyl mercury discharge from chemical plant into rivers and seas. Flesh-eating fish that eat those contaminated fish also accumulate the toxic substance through the food web. Thus, accumulated methyl mercury in safe food by the process of biological magnification intoxicates people who have eaten a lot of such seafood daily. Characteristics. Minamata disease is due to a typical industrial pollution incident caused by pollutant generated in industrial activities. The disease was officially recognized on May 1st, 1956. The characteristics of Minamata disease are summarized as: the causative substance was methyl mercury. Methyl mercury released from factory into water accumulated in aquatic organisms via their gills or intestines directly or through their food chain. Humans had taken it by eating polluted fish. This process is called bioaccumulation. The wastewater containing methyl mercury changed from inorganic form in the production process was discharged from the factory into Minamata Bay and polluted sea and river. Fish and shellfish as well as sea environment were polluted by the wastewater through the process of bioaccumulation. Now let us take a look on the effects. In 1957, this unknown disease was named Minamata disease. The first report on Minamata disease patient was filed in May 1965. By July 1965, a total of 26 patients were recognized, of which 5 had already died. The psychological effects, including successive loss of motor control, were devastating and resulted in sometimes partly paralyzed and contorted bodies. The pathological change of methyl mercury poisoning in the nervous system, gut disturbance, loss of balance, speech disturbance, sight disturbance of peripheral areas in the visual fields, or we can say constriction of visual fields, stereoanesthesia, muscle weakness and muscle cramp, hardness of hearing, disturbances of senses of pain, touch or temperature, social and cultural consequences. Stigmatization and discrimination against patients, negative image, the state of pollution, rioting and social unrest, social awareness of the disease. Pesticide pollution in Indian history. The most terrifying effects of pesticide contamination of groundwater became to be known when pesticides residue were found in bottled water. It was from July and December 2002. The Pollution Monitoring Laboratory of the New Delhi-based Center for Science and Environment analyzed 17 brands of bottled water, including both packaged drinking water and packaged natural mineral water, commonly sold in areas that fall within the National Capital Region of Delhi. The pesticide residues of organic chlorine and organic phosphorus pesticides, which are most commonly used in India, were found in the samples. Among the organochlorines, gamma hexachlorocyclohexane and DDT were prevalent, while among organophosphorus pesticides, marathon and chloropyrifos were the most common. All these were present above the permissible limits specified the European Economic Community, which is the norm used all over Europe. These raw water samples collected from the plants revealed the presence of pesticides residue. This nearly indicated that the sources of pesticides residue in the polluted groundwater are used to manufacture the bottled water, despite the fact that all bottled water plants use a range of purification methods. Main problem. The fault obviously lies in the treatment methods used. These plants use membrane technology, where the water is filtered using membrane with ultra-small pores to remove fine suspended solids and all bacteria and protozoa and even viruses. While nanofiltration can remove insecticides and herbicides, it's expensive and thus rarely used. The low concentrations of pesticide residues in bottled water do not cause acute or immediate effects. However, repeated exposure, even to extremely minuscule amounts, can result in chronic effects like cancer, liver and kidney damage, disorders of the nervous system, damage to the immune system, and birth defects. Lack of specified standards. There were no standards for bottled water in India till September 29, 2000, when the Union Ministry of Health and Family Welfare issued a notification number 759E, amending the Prevention of Food Adulteration Rules 1954. The BIS, Bureau of Indian Standards certification mark, became mandatory for bottled water from March 29, 2001. River pollution in India. Almost all the rivers in India are polluted. The cause of pollution may also be more or less similar. River Damodar. The 563-kilometer long Damodar River originates near Chandwa village in the Chotanagpur Hills in Bihar's Palmau district. It flows through one of the richest mineral belts in the world before draining into the Hooghly about 50 kilometers south of Kolkata, and has become highly polluted due to following reasons. Mining. As underground mines cannot keep pace with the rising demand, 60% of the coal extracted from the area comes from open cast mines, which are responsible for serious land degradation. The disposal of rock and soil extracted along with the coal only adds to the problem. Fly ash from thermal power plants. As most of these plants are located on the banks of the river, the fly ash eventually finds its way into the river. The bottom ash from the boilers is mixed with water to form slurry, which is then drained into ash ponds. Most of the ponds are full, and in several cases, the drainage pipes are choked. The slurry is therefore directly discharged into the river. Effects of pollution on water and environment. The river and its tributaries are the largest sources of drinking water for the huge population that lives in the Damodar Valley. On April 2nd, 1990, about 2 lakh liters of furnace oil spilled into the river from Bokaro steel plant. For a week after the incident, 5 million people drank contaminated water in which the oil levels were 40 to 80 times higher than the permissible value of 0.03 mg per liter, causing various disorders among the consumers. Remedy of this pollution. The Damodar Action Plan, an end of the pipe pollution treatment scheme, seeks to tackle effluents. One viable option could be switch to less polluting industries and cleaner technology. Municipal solid waste management case study of Surat. The rapid urbanization and rise in population in Surat led to the growth of slums, increase in garbage and overflowing drains. In 1994, Surat was struck by an outbreak of a virulent disease somewhat like the plague. It was a harsh reminder of what negligence in the area of solid waste management can lead to. Within a span of 18 months, the city made a complete reversal from a dirty, garbage-strewn city to become one of the cleanest cities in the country. Community participation played a key role in the rapid implementation of decisions taken by the corporation. Subsequent to the disaster, the attitudes of the citizens changed and they diligently tried to improve its living conditions. Institutional changes were the first thing to happen. A commissioner was appointed for each zone with additional powers. The officials responsible for solid waste management were made accountable for their work, and field visits were made mandatory for them each day. The Solid Waste Management Department and other related departments were made to work and cooperate with one another. Grievance redressal cards were issued to people so that complaints could be registered. The complaints was attended to within 24 hours and the card returned to the citizen. Initially, the Gujarat government's Municipal Act did not have any provision to penalize littering. However, after the plague, the government realized that it was important to impose such a penalty in order to make people aware of their responsibility in maintaining their city's cleanliness. Thereafter, a fine of ₹50 was imposed for every offence of littering, and it was doubled for every subsequent offence. Sanitation in Ratlam. In a landmark judgment in 1980, the Supreme Court explicitly recognized the impact of a deteriorating urban environment on the poor. It linked basic public health facilities to human rights and compelled the municipality to provide proper sanitation and drainage. However, according to numerous reports, little has changed in Ratlam today. Doon Valley Quarrying. In 1987, the Rural Litigation and Entitlement Kendra, on the behalf of residents of the Doon Valley, filed a case in the Supreme Court against limestone quarrying. This case was the first requiring the Supreme Court to balance environmental and ecological integrity against industrial demands on forest resources. The courts directed the authorities to stop quarrying in the Mussoorie Hills, but today mining continues unchecked in the interior valleys. Construction in Silent Valley. In 1980, the Kerala High Court threw out a writ filed by the Society for the Protection of the Silent Valley seeking a ban on construction of a hydroelectric project in the valley. However, despite an unfavorable judgment, active lobbying and grassroots action by environmentalists stopped the project. Polluting the Ganga. In 1985, activist advocate M.C. Mehta filed a writ petition in the Supreme Court to highlight the pollution of the Ganga by industries and municipalities located on its banks. In a historic judgment in 1987, the court ordered the closure of a number of polluting tanneries near Kanpur. Justice E.S. Venkataramayya, in his judgment, observed, just like an industry which cannot pay minimum wages to its workers cannot be allowed to exist, a tannery which cannot set up a primary treatment plant cannot be permitted to continue to be in existence. In the aftermath of the Delhi oleum gas leak in 1985, the Supreme Court evolved. It gave the standard of responsibility in liability for such accidents. It provided that the enterprise must make sure that no harm to the people in the vicinity comes from the hazardous material used by the enterprise. Without any exception, the enterprise will be responsible if such harm occurs. This is a stricter version than the strict liability principle used elsewhere in the world. Based on this principle, the affected people can file tort claims in civil courts, that is, the offending firms can be sued. Preventive measures. Though there are enough laws to tackle industrial disaster in India, there is a need to reassess their effectiveness. There is a need to set up buffer zones around factories handling hazardous substances. This would help contain disaster and reduce the loss of lives and property. The apex court had noted that compensation should have a deterrent effect for such disasters. It must be proportional to the capacity of the offending enterprise. Awareness about the disaster management plan must be disseminated to the local authorities, especially as CBRN, chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear accidents require a specialized response. All such industrial establishments must be mandated to keep an updated and functional disaster management plan. The workers must also be made aware of the plan and trained to respond to such situations using periodic safety drills. The industries must disseminate their disaster management plans among the local population. The issue of sitting off the industries needs to be solved by gradually removing industries away from polluted areas. Also, the growing cities must be planned away from such industrial establishments. Infrastructure resilience needs to be worked upon given the increasing frequency with which natural calamities strike India. For example, the 1991 super cyclone in Odisha caused an ammonia gas leak from a fertilizer plant, and the 2001 Bhuj earthquake damaged a phosphoric acid sludge containment. The industrial development under various initiatives like Make in India must be accompanied by adequate safety measures and regulations, that is, growth must be sustainable. The Centre gave certain guidelines in the aftermath of the Vizag gas leak. The NDMA asked the industries to treat the first week of restarting operations after the lockdown as a trial run. It advised against high production targets in the first week. It also asked the industries to train its staff to identify abnormalities that could trigger such accidents. Restarting of production should be preceded by complete safety audits. Now, coming to the conclusion, the world is seeing a shift in the locus of economic activity in times of the trade war and COVID lockdown, and India is seeking to attract more investment and turn into a manufacturing hub replacing China. Also, there is a pressing need to sustain livelihoods by boosting economic activity that is already being restricted by the unavoidable lockdown conditions. In such desperate times, the best gains can be achieved only when care is taken to prevent such disasters. With this, today's lecture comes to its conclusion. We shall see you in the next sitting with another topic pertaining to a subject. Till then, good luck and goodbye.